At 9:47 a.m. Eastern Standard Time this morning, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer stood before the House of Commons in London and delivered a statement that has fundamentally altered the balance of power within NATO, sent the U.S. State Department into full crisis mode, and confirmed what many analysts feared but few expected to happen this quickly. The United Kingdom is formally endorsing Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney's proposal to create the $95 billion Alternative Security Partnership Fund, and Britain is committing $18 billion to capitalize the fund, making the UK the largest single contributor. More significantly, Starmer announced that Britain and Canada have agreed to establish a bilateral defense coordination framework, independent of existing U.S.-led structures, that will serve as the operational backbone for this new NATO funding mechanism. This is the United Kingdom, America's closest military ally for over a century, the country that has stood with the United States in every major conflict since World War I, publicly choosing Canada over the United States in a dispute about the future structure of the Western Alliance. The special relationship between Washington and London, the cornerstone of Anglo-American cooperation that has defined global security for generations, has just been fundamentally fractured by Donald Trump's handling of the Canada crisis, and the consequences of what Britain just did will reshape international security for decades. In this breakdown, I'm going to walk you through exactly what Starmer said in Parliament and why his statement represents such a dramatic shift in British foreign policy. I'm going to reveal the secret negotiations between London and Ottawa over the past week that led to this moment. I'm going to show you the immediate reaction from Washington and why U.S. officials are describing this as the worst blow to American global leadership since the Suez Crisis in 1956. I'm going to explain what the UK-Canada bilateral defense framework actually entails and how it changes military cooperation across the Atlantic. And I'm going to give you 3 scenarios for where transatlantic relations go from here, including the scenario where Britain effectively leaves the U.S. security sphere and realigns with European and Commonwealth partners. Subscribe to join the community, leave a comment so we can keep the conversation going, and share this video if it brought you value. Let me walk you through what Starmer actually said, because every sentence was carefully constructed to send specific messages to multiple audiences simultaneously. Starmer opened by acknowledging the seriousness of the moment. He said, "The United Kingdom faces a decision that will define our role in the world for the next generation. For 77 years, NATO has been the foundation of our collective security. For over a century, the partnership between Britain and the United States has been the cornerstone of that security. But that partnership has always rested on shared values, mutual respect, and reliable commitment to defending each other and our allies. When those foundations are questioned, we must ask ourselves what kind of alliance we are defending and whether that alliance serves British interests and British values." Starmer then addressed the Canada crisis directly. He said, "Canada, our Commonwealth partner and NATO ally, faces a security situation that is unprecedented. A fellow NATO member has questioned Canada's sovereignty, threatened to dismantle bilateral defense agreements, and suggested that Canadian territory should become part of another country. These actions violate the most basic principles of international law and alliance solidarity. Canada has requested NATO's support. The United Kingdom believes Canada deserves that support." Starmer paused, and the chamber went completely silent. He then said, "The United Kingdom will contribute $18 billion to the Alternative Security Partnership Fund proposed by Prime Minister Carney. We will work with Canada, France, Germany, and other alliance members to establish this fund as a permanent mechanism within NATO that ensures all members, regardless of size, have access to collective security resources when they face credible threats. This fund will operate on qualified majority voting to ensure that no single member can block legitimate security requests from other members." The reaction in the Commons was immediate. Conservative MPs, many of whom have traditionally championed the U.S. UK special relationship, sat in stunned silence. Some looked genuinely shocked. Labour MPs on Starmer's side applauded, but cautiously, aware of the magnitude of what their Prime Minister had just announced. Starmer wasn't finished. He said, "Additionally, the United Kingdom and Canada have agreed to establish a bilateral defence coordination framework. This framework will include joint military exercises, intelligence sharing protocols independent of existing Five Eyes structures, and coordinated defence procurement. Britain and Canada will work together to ensure that both nations can defend their interests and their allies, regardless of the reliability of any other partner." That last line, regardless of the reliability of any other partner, was a direct shot at the United States. Starmer was saying, on the record, in Parliament, broadcast live around the world, that Britain can no longer rely on the United States. He closed his statement by saying, "The United Kingdom values our partnership with the United States. We hope that partnership can be restored to its traditional foundation of mutual respect and shared commitment. But the UK will not sacrifice our principles, our allies, or our security to maintain a relationship that has become conditional and unpredictable. We stand with Canada, we stand with NATO, and we stand for the values that have always defined the Western Alliance." Subscribe right now, because what I'm about to show you is the evidence that this decision was not made lightly, and that Britain has been planning this move for days in close coordination with Canada and European partners. Receipt number 1, the secret negotiations. According to diplomatic sources, British and Canadian officials have been in intensive discussions since February 22nd, the day Canada first invoked NATO Article 4. The discussions took place through secure channels and involved the highest levels of both governments, including direct conversations between Starmer and Carney, between UK Defence Secretary John Healey and Canadian Defence Minister Bill Blair, and between intelligence chiefs from both countries. The British side initially approached these discussions cautiously, exploring whether there was a way to support Canada without directly breaking with the United States. But as Trump's rhetoric escalated, as his threats to NORAD and intelligence sharing intensified, and as it became clear that the U.S. administration had no intention of walking back those threats, British officials concluded that defending Canada was both morally necessary and strategically essential. Receipt number 2, the Commonwealth calculation. One factor that influenced Britain's decision is the Commonwealth connection. Canada and the UK are both members of the Commonwealth of Nations, the organization of 56 countries, most of which are former British territories. The Commonwealth has limited formal power, but it represents significant diplomatic and cultural ties. According to sources, Commonwealth leaders have been quietly communicating throughout the Canada-US crisis, and there's widespread support among Commonwealth members for Canada's position. Australia, New Zealand, and several Caribbean nations have privately told British officials that they expect the UK to support Canada. If Britain had sided with the US against Canada, it would have damaged UK credibility across the entire Commonwealth. That calculation mattered to Starmer's government. Receipt number 3, the European coordination. Britain's decision to back Canada's proposal was coordinated with France and Germany. According to sources, Starmer spoke with French President Emmanuel Macron and German Chancellor Olaf Scholz on February 24th and 25th, and all three leaders agreed that the Alternative Security Partnership Fund should move forward. France had already committed $15 billion. Germany is expected to announce a $12 billion contribution within the next 48 hours. With Britain, France, and Germany all supporting the fund and contributing a combined $45 billion, the fund is now viable even if the United States and some Eastern European members stay out. The coordination among Europe's three largest military powers signals that this is not just about Canada. This is about Europe deciding it needs security mechanisms that don't depend on American approval. Receipt number 4, the Five Eyes implications. The UK-Canada bilateral defense framework that Starmer announced includes intelligence sharing protocols independent of existing Five Eyes structures. That phrase is loaded with significance. Five Eyes is the intelligence alliance among the U.S., U.K., Canada, Australia, and New Zealand that has operated since World War II. It's the most comprehensive intelligence sharing arrangement in the world. Starmer is saying that Britain and Canada are going to establish intelligence sharing that operates outside Five Eyes, which means intelligence that may not be shared with the United States. This doesn't mean Five Eyes is ending, but it means the UK and Canada are preparing for scenarios where they cannot trust U.S. intelligence agencies to act in their interests. That preparation fundamentally undermines Five Eyes because the alliance depends on absolute trust among all 5 members. Here's what happened in Washington when Starmer's statement reached U.S. officials. At 9:50 a.m., 3 minutes after Starmer finished speaking, the U.S. ambassador to the U.K. called the State Department. The message was blunt. Britain just broke with us. At 10:15 a.m., the State Department convened an emergency meeting. According to sources, the meeting was described as the most somber gathering of senior diplomats in recent memory. Officials discussed whether there was any way to reverse Britain's decision or to prevent other allies from following suit. The consensus was that unless Trump immediately changes course on Canada, the UK decision is irreversible and other NATO members will follow. At 11 a.m., Secretary of State called the White House and requested an urgent meeting with Trump. The Secretary reportedly told White House staff that the UK's decision represents the single greatest blow to American global leadership in 70 years, and that immediate presidential action is required. At 11:45 a.m., Trump was briefed. According to sources familiar with the meeting, Trump's initial reaction was anger. He reportedly said Britain was being disloyal and stupid, and that the UK will regret this. But when advisors explained the implications, that Britain backing Canada's fund makes it viable, that other European countries will now join, and that NATO is effectively splitting into US-led and European-led structures, Trump became quieter. He reportedly asked, "Can we stop this?" The Secretary of State told him that the only way to stop it is to immediately retract all threats toward Canada, reaffirm NORAD, commit to continued intelligence sharing, and apologize for questioning Canadian sovereignty. Trump reportedly said, "I'm not apologizing to anyone," and ended the meeting. At 1:30 p.m., the White House issued a statement. The statement said, "The United Kingdom's decision to support Canada's proposal is disappointing and misguided. The special relationship between the United States and the United Kingdom has been the foundation of global security for generations. We hope our British friends will reconsider this decision before irreparable damage is done to that relationship." That's diplomatic language, but the threat is clear. The U.S. is warning Britain that there will be consequences. At 2:15 p.m., the Pentagon issued a separate statement that was, once again, more measured than the White House. The Pentagon said, "The United States values its military partnership with the United Kingdom. We will continue to work with British forces and all NATO allies to ensure collective security. We believe dialogue and cooperation serve us better than division." That's the Pentagon signaling to London that U.S. military leadership is not on board with Trump's confrontational approach and that the military-to-military relationship can be preserved even if the political relationship is damaged. Congressional reaction was immediate and intense. The 12 Senate Republicans who have consistently broken with Trump on the Canada crisis released a joint statement saying, "The United Kingdom's decision is a direct consequence of the President's reckless destruction of Allied trust. When America's closest ally chooses Canada over us, that is an indictment of this administration's failure. The President must change course immediately." Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer gave a floor speech calling Britain's decision a 5-alarm fire for American national security and demanding that Trump stop tweeting insults and start repairing the damage he has caused to alliances that took generations to build. But Trump-loyal Republicans attacked Britain. Senator Lindsey Graham said, "If the UK wants to side with Canada against America, maybe we need to reconsider our commitments to British security." Senator Tom Cotton said, "Britain just chose a second-rate power over the world's superpower. They'll regret that choice." Let me give you 3 scenarios for where this goes. Scenario 1, the emergency reconciliation. The combination of Britain's defection, European support for Canada's fund, and bipartisan congressional pressure finally forces Trump to reverse course. Within 72 hours, Trump makes a public statement reaffirming U.S. commitment to NORAD, committing to continued intelligence sharing with all Five Eyes partners, and stating that he has always respected Canadian sovereignty and any statements to the contrary were misunderstood. Starmer and Carney accept this as sufficient. Britain remains the largest contributor to the Alternative Security Partnership Fund, which proceeds as planned, but the UK-Canada bilateral defense framework is put on hold, pending improvement in U.S.-Canada relations. The immediate crisis de-escalates, but the damage to U.S. credibility is permanent, and the Alternative Security Partnership Fund exists as ongoing insurance against future U.S. unreliability. Scenario 2, the transatlantic realignment. Trump refuses to back down. Britain proceeds with full implementation of the UK-Canada bilateral defense framework. France and Germany join the framework, creating a 4-nation defense coordination structure that operates independently of U.S. leadership. The Alternative Security Partnership Fund becomes the primary mechanism for European defense spending, and NATO's traditional U.S.-led command structures atrophy. Britain reduces military cooperation with the United States and pivots toward European and Commonwealth partners. The U.S. UK special relationship ends after 120 years. American bases in the UK remain operational, but at reduced capacity. Britain's nuclear deterrent, which has relied on U.S. support, is gradually transitioned to independent or European systems. Within 5 years, Britain is functionally more aligned with France and Germany than with the United States. Scenario 3, the full alliance fracture. Trump, enraged by Britain's defection, announces the United States is withdrawing from NATO's integrated military command structure. Congress blocks full withdrawal from the NATO treaty, but Trump uses executive authority to reduce U.S. military participation in NATO activities. European nations respond by formalizing the Alternative Security Partnership Fund as a new European defense union that supersedes NATO. Britain, France, Germany, Canada, and 20 other countries join the EDU. Poland and the Baltic states remain in traditional NATO, but find themselves in an alliance with only the U.S. and a handful of others. The Western alliance splits into competing structures. China and Russia exploit the division. American global military dominance collapses not from external defeat, but from internal fracture caused by Trump's inability to maintain allied relationships. I'm watching whether Germany formally announces its contribution to the Alternative Security Partnership Fund within 48 hours, whether any other NATO members follow Britain's lead, and whether Trump makes any statement in the next 24 hours that shows willingness to compromise. Britain just chose Canada over America. That sentence should be impossible. But it happened, and it happened because Trump's actions made it impossible for Britain to do anything else without abandoning its own values and security interests. The special relationship is broken. The question now is whether it can be repaired or whether we're watching the permanent end of the Anglo-American partnership that has defined the world for a century.